Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Rise podcast with me, your host, Katie Oman, women's empowerment coach, author, and book coach. I am here today with another fabulous woman to inspire us, to boost us, to motivate us, and to educate us. And I hope that these podcasts really are giving you that kind of daily dose of inspiration whenever you're going to watch it. Today, I have another wonderful woman, like I said, and her name is Paula Carnell. And I'm really happy that she's here with us. She's been away for a while and she's been up quite early, so I'm just happy that she's here. So Paula, thank you so much, my darling, for being here. It's generally a real pleasure and an honour.
Oh, no, it's the honour and pleasure is all mine. It's always a joy to be invited to share, my experiences, my life, and it's always great because you get another perspective as well when different people ask you questions. And so, yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's absolutely wonderful. So obviously, for those of you that don't know you and the work that you do, I will give you the floor. So tell us all about Paula, what do you do and what you're all about.
Okay, so basically I am a consultant beekeeper and I'm also a honey sommelier. I have my own podcast, I have a website, and I'm a speaker. I'm a TEDx speaker and I speak all around the world. So I've just come back from Chile where I was speaking at Apamondia, which is a global bee conference. And I've been a beekeeper now for about 13 years. And I'm a bit controversial because I'm a natural beekeeper. And the main thing about my work is I believe that what's killing bees is also killing us. So my business is called Creating a Buzz About Health. And I'm really trying to help people understand that connection between bee health and human health. So what we can learn from the bees.
Wow, that sounds amazing. How did you get into beekeeping? It seems like I can't imagine the careers advisor at school came around and said this was an option. So how did that even happen for you?
Well, I've always been a bit outside the box. So my first career was actually an artist and I always drew, and I sold my first painting at 13. I had my first exhibition at 16 and I was a professional artist for 20 years. So as soon as I finished art school, I had my own business. And then when I was 40, I collapsed and I spent the next 7 years bed and wheelchair bound with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic condition. So that was pretty tough. And 2 years into being bedbound, one of the ways that I coped with the situation, because obviously I'd lost my business, I couldn't paint, couldn't do anything, had to have carers. And I was trying to think about what I could do rather than what I couldn't. And I would just lay in bed meditating because that was mostly what I could do. And I would think about all the things I always wanted to do in my life, but was too busy to do because with my first career, I was busy, I was painting, and I thought that was all I'd ever do. But you always have these little ideas and think, oh, that would be nice to do. That'd be nice to do. And something I always thought I would like to do would be beekeeping. Nobody in my family is a beekeeper. I didn't know any beekeepers. I have no idea where it came from. I just felt I'd like to do it. So 2 years into being bedbound, my husband was saying, oh, what would you like for your birthday? And, I couldn't have a party. I couldn't go anywhere. And, I didn't really need anything. I couldn't even read. I mean, I love books and love reading. And if someone said, oh, you got 7 years in bed, you'd think, brilliant. I can watch all these films. I could read books, but I couldn't do anything like that. I couldn't even look people in the eye. It would make me sick. So I just said, oh, I'd like to keep bees. I'd like a beehive. And my husband, Greg, was like, well, you can't have a beehive. You can't get out of bed. You can't look after the bees. We haven't got bees. So what's the point of having a beehive? And I just nagged and nagged. And every time he said, well, come on, what would you like for your birthday? I just go, beehive, beehive, beehive. So in the end, he bought a kit and he built one. So in the evenings, he was out in the garage and he was putting together this beehive. And then I was given a beehive. And then as life goes, there was this whole string of synchronicities. And then a local beekeeper ended up putting bees in my hive and then teaching me beekeeping. And because I was learning about my own body, because Ehlers-Danlos is quite a complex condition, and particularly when I was ill, there wasn't a lot known about it. So you're just at home alone in bed with carers, and there's nobody else really trying to find out how to fix you, so you're very much on your own trying to sort it out. So I was on a deep learning journey about learning about my body and how to heal. And then I started to to learn about beekeeping, and I realized that beekeeping wasn't that natural hobby that I thought it might be. And I realized that a lot of the practices with conventional beekeeping, and I don't mean with industrial honey farming, I mean with one person with one hive in their garden, if they're taught how to keep bees, it's very chemical biased. So you are taught to take all the honey, feed the bees sugar, and then use chemical treatments inside the hive to protect and treat them for disease. The big learning for me about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome was that anything unnatural in my environment or in my body had a huge price. And so I had to be as natural as possible. I could smell, if somebody came into our house and they had makeup on that smelled, I could smell it and it would make me sick. You know, I was so sensitive to chemicals, any kind of chemicals. So I couldn't understand why anyone would give sugar to wild animals. And just that simple thing made me very controversial in the beekeeping world. When I did recover and I started to question this and I started to challenge a lot of the beekeeping practices, it did sort of put me to one side, really, in the conventional world of beekeeping. And because I intuitively felt that what I was feeling was right, that put me on a path to then prove I was right by looking up the science. So that was really how my journey happened.
Wow. That's amazing, and such a journey that you've been on to get to this point, and lots of twists and turns, as life is one to do, of course. Yeah. I was thinking while you were talking that there's a really beautiful analogy in that for a lot of people that perhaps I hadn't really thought about before. I mean, I don't know an awful lot about beekeeping, I'll be honest with you, but that thing of like taking the honey, feeding the bees sugar, and then chemically kind of keeping them well, isn't that what society does to people? Like, to take away, and if you think of the honey as like your power, your magic, your intuition, it's to take these things away from you, or to make you feel like you can't trust them, or they're not yours, and then to kind of keep us numb and kind of docile with, you know, all the things that they feed us with the media and you know, all these things that we're supposed to be entertained by with the sugar, which on the outside looks like it's tasty and delicious, but actually isn't really filling you. And then obviously to keep you, like I say, with the chemicals, to kind of keep you medicated, really. I mean, there is a real analogy in that, in the way that we treat animals and how we treat ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The more, I mean, when I first recovered, I mainly recovered with the help of herbal medicine and plant-based minerals. And so when I emerged, I then had to think, crikey, I've got to work now, you know, I've got to recontribute into society. But I'd gone through the whole who am I, because I was no longer the artist. And I had lost everything, as, you know, when I was sick. You know, I still had my children, I had my husband, but I wasn't even able to do basic housework or cooking or, you know, anything. And so that was a huge challenge, to find out who you are and to see value in yourself as somebody who can do no thing. And that is a huge shift and very challenging to have to go through. But yeah, I've learned a lot then about the connection between herbs, minerals and bees. And the more I learned about bees, the more it pulled everything together. So when I first emerged, I started my studies to become a medicinal herbalist. And then I was doing a lot of talks about my recovery for the plant-based minerals. And then the more I did with bees, it was like, oh my gosh, they're the original herbalists. They're the original beings that understood about minerals and about the connection of all things.
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel I've been gifted. It's almost like the bees came into my life and they're using me as this channel to get the message across, you know, just to share what I've learned to as many people as possible. And I think through a lot of the people you've interviewed, we often find that our greatest challenge ends up being our gift. And, you know, although it was extremely challenging going through that illness, you know, I wouldn't give it away. You know, I wouldn't go back and change a thing. You know, it's made me who I am. And when you've gone through such an extreme challenge, it gives you credibility to speak with knowledge and wisdom, and it counteracts that sort of evidence or proof. It's like, no, I've lived this. This
Yeah,
is what I know
exactly.
because I've lived it. And
Exactly. I mean, I had that in my life. Sorry. It's to realize that it's not happening to you. You know, you are not a victim of circumstance. Actually, everything is happening for you. And you may not understand or appreciate that in the moment because, like, it's happening here and you can't see the bigger picture. It's that thing of the tapestry analogy, you know, that when it's only hindsight that you step back and realize how everything is connected and
oh,
everything has happened so that you can really take you to where you're supposed to be. And like you say, to have this wisdom and this experience and this understanding of saying that I'm not just, I didn't just read this in a book and I'm going to use it to help other people. Like, I've lived this is my life. And so I'm able then to help other people because I can really resonate with it on a very deep level. So it's very clear that this was always your destined path. And of course, it was hard to see that in the moment, but now you can see how all the dots are connected.
oh yeah. And like a big tapestry, the 20 years as an artist is fitting in because a lot of my work is creative, and
Yeah.
you have to have that creative thought. And being an artist, you learn to communicate, and through thinking outside the box, so you see things that other people don't see.
Yeah.
So nothing has been wasted at all.
Mm.
And there was this little meme I saw on Instagram when I was sort of going through the transition of recovery and thinking, who am I and what do I do and how do I earn a living doing all these crazy things? And I saw this meme and it just said, her life is her art. And I thought, oh, yes, it's not about my hand painting a picture. It's about me being art. It is living the art that I want to see, you know. And
That's beautiful. Oh my God, I had that, you know, people, as I'm very spiritual, for those that don't realize, so I don't kind of massively talk about it perhaps. And I don't do it on a certain day in a certain building. You know, my life is spiritual because I am. Therefore, everything I do is spiritual because I am there. It's a walking, living embodiment of it rather than a separate, like, this is, I do this now kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, you've asked about what do people find, or what do you find that people misunderstand you? You know, what is it that people misunderstand? And I think the thing that challenges me and really upsets me, it really is a deep wound, is when people, I suppose they're projecting their own lives, but when they don't see that my work is not about me, it's a bigger mission. It's far bigger than me. And so all the decisions I make for the work I do are not about, you know, they should be a bit more about, you know, looking after myself or, you know, paying the mortgage and things like that. But they're not. It's about, this is the work that has to be done and I'm going to do it. And I think that is the, you know, really upsetting when people don't see that. And that's something that I struggle with. But you know, I'm nearly 55 and you just get to a point where it's like you've got to stop worrying about what other people think. But it still does surprise me when I will get comments or reactions and I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't get me, you don't see what it is I'm doing.
Well, I think it's the difference between doing it as like a job or even as a hobby and doing it as a calling. I think it's a very, because not everybody, not the work that they're doing or whatever they're doing is not necessarily their calling. And I think leaning into your calling is actually really brave because it doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always go to like success. So it's a bit more of a twisty turny path. And some people, that's quite scary. So to understand that this is bigger than you may be completely out of their experience and their understanding at that time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, you know, we all have to have compassion because everybody's here for a different reason and has different mission. But then that does teach you to have more compassion for other people, you know, and accept what they're on here to do. But you know, I just need to be free and enabled to do what I feel is my work.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what drives me.
Absolutely. And like I say, I don't know an awful lot about it. Is there a lot of women in what's it like being a woman in that world? Do you find that it's still quite patriarchal at times?
It is quite patriarchal. And what's quite interesting is there always have been women in beekeeping, and there are a few women who have excelled and been really influential. So there's an amazing woman who passed away in the late 90s, I think, or maybe early 2000s called Eva Crane. And she came into beekeeping late on in life, and she was a nuclear physicist who then came into beekeeping, and she published something like 800 papers on beekeeping. And she traveled the world, and she did amazing research on honey and bees. But what I have found in my experience is there are women who've come into beekeeping. Right now, there's a lot more women like me who are very spiritual, who are coming into beekeeping. They go to the conventional course and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to squish queen cells. I don't want to be using chemicals. I don't want to be taking all the honey. But that big machine that is the conventional beekeeping world, there have been women who've come into it who, whether by choice or just being battered, they've molded into that very masculine, patriarchal model of control of the beehive, and the academics of, I'm a master beekeeper, so I've passed all these exams. And I've come outside of this, and I have done some of the exams, but what I found really interesting is the way to pass the exams is to memorize the correct answer. And yet everyone who works with bees knows that every colony is different. They're living being organisms, and there is no right or wrong answer. Everything changes. Every colony has different things. And I find that very inauthentic to have a qualification that isn't true to the reality of keeping bees. It is to somebody's truth. You know, for an example, I did the honey exam over early spring this year, and I'm trained as a honey sensory analyst in Bologna. So I've got more than the average beekeeper's knowledge of honey. You know, I work as a honey judge. I can detect floral sources of honey, and I've got over 400 varieties of honey in my personal collection. Wow. You know, so I know a bit about honey. And I did this exam, and one of the questions is name 3 unpalatable honeys. And what has happened is somebody in a beekeeping division has declared that these 3 types of honey are unpalatable. And one of them, dandelion, I think is one of the best honeys in the world. But to pass the exam and to get the 3 points, I had to include dandelion as one of the answers. And I wanted to write an essay about, no, actually unpalatable honey is when it's fermented, or when it's been mistreated, or when the beekeeper is over smoked, or when there's been too many chemicals used in the hive or antibiotics. That's unpalatable, or it's coming from a toxic environment. But no, I had to say, when the bees choose to go to the best medicinal plant we have in this country, dandelions, and they make a fine, bright yellow, gorgeous honey, and all the conditions have been right, and they've been happy to share it with the beekeeper, no, we're meant to throw it away. That's unpalatable. And that, you know, really does irritate me. So although egotistically I'd love to say, oh yeah, I'm a master beekeeper, but the process of being a master beekeeper, there's a lot of hurdles and jumps that I don't agree with. So I would rather be a beekeeper with happy, healthy bees who has a lot of experience that maybe people are drawn to, and if I can give advice that people take away and it helps them, then that's good. But yeah, so there is, you know, within the beekeeping world, it is very masculine. You know, we do call them the beards, but there are a group of women who are also like the beards, you know. So it is quite an interesting thing. But there is this huge surge of women, and interestingly, men, but men who are coming from a very masculine, military and quite powerful background, who are coming into beekeeping, but from a more spiritual angle. And that continues to surprise me, that I thought my courses would be full of women just like me, but I'm actually getting a lot of former military, you know, particularly the military field, which is incredible. But they're very, very spiritual, really connecting, and they get it. They really get it. And, you know, so it's very exciting times.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, to be honest. And that we live in a very patriarchal society and have done for over 2,000 years. And it's not about biology and what bits and bobs you have. It's about the fact that we all have masculine and feminine energy within us, every single person. And even women can buy into the patriarchy because we're so indoctrinated from it from like birth. You know, all of us are. But there is a shift happening. And I do feel that people are leaning more into their feminine energy and more into more perhaps intuitive and holistic nature of things, and community seems to be rising, which is great. I think the thing we have to watch is, and it happens with every area of society, is that when the pendulum has been swung over here for a really long time, it's dead normal for people to grab the pendulum and pull it right back over here. So what we're trying to watch is that we don't end up with a matriarchal society, because actually what we're trying to find is the middle, to say that actually everybody is equal, everybody has value, everybody should have equity. And I think that is really what we're driving here. And so the fact that these military men are coming from a very patriarchal, disciplined, organized, structured way of being into something that is more holistic, I think is great, and long may it continue. I think it benefits everybody, basically.
No, it is really exciting, and we can learn so much about the bees and their organization and their social structure for how humanity can be as well. So, I love it when I get to speak at business conferences where you can actually share the learnings from the hive in how to organize a business in a less patriarchal or even matriarchal, where you do need to have that balance. And that structure, and a true democracy, which you get in a beehive, but you don't get in most human organizations.
Yeah, I love that. I also love the thing that says scientifically the bee should not fly because of the weight of the bee and the size of the wing, but the bee doesn't care, it flies anyway. And so it's just, and I love that for human beings as well. It's like, it's not about, well, you should do this and you can't do this. It's like, it's just noise. Just follow your own path and do what you want to do anyway.
Yeah, if you can dream it, you can create it. And I've had so many experiences in my life. I shouldn't still be alive now. There's places I've traveled to that I dreamt of in the past without any rhyme or reason. And the coincidences and synchronicities in life are absolutely joyful. And it gives your 50s such fun, because gradually all the pieces of that tapestry are coming together and connecting, and you can see how it's all been perfect. So I'm really loving being the age I am, really.
Well, it gives me great hope, because I'm 42 next month. So you can set me on the path of going, okay, it's just going to keep getting better and better.
Yeah, it does. It's great. And once you've got menopause out of the way, I'm not sure if I had a really easy menopause because I was so ill, or if I was so ill and it was partly because of the menopause that I collapsed at that time. But either way, it was a cocoon, and I came out the other side, and boy, you can focus. There's not all the distractions.
Looking forward to that bit.
Yeah, I mean, the kids are bigger now, they look after themselves, so it is a great time. It is, but you just have to learn to embrace the downsides of getting older.
No, absolutely. But I think it's very inspirational, because there's this thing in society where women of a certain age, normally after you're 50, are kind of invisible, because their worth of being like this fertile being that can carry children is now done. And so a lot of women, I think over 50, kind of feel a bit invisible, like, because society doesn't value them anymore. And so I think it's very inspirational for older women to say, hey, we're still here and we can still do what the hell we want, and it's fabulous, and we're living our best lives. I think that's massively inspirational, not just for other women of around the same age and older, but for younger generations to say, hey, it's not all about youth and beauty. That's the way society has been constructed, that we're all chasing youth. But actually, there's something really beautiful in getting older if you allow it to happen.
Yeah, and we need more of those role models. We need to see that it's okay to have grey hair, and that's, I think, what I was really searching for during my 40s, was because I stopped dyeing my hair when I was ill, because I was conscious then of just how damaging that could be. And so I got this silvery streak. And then it was like, gosh, when I start going out again, and particularly when I was in the wheelchair, my husband was looking down and the top of my head was all grey, and he's like, oh, you're getting really grey. And it was like, oh no, what do I do? What do I do? And we want more role models to show how you can still look okay with grey hair. And I do love it because, you know, no matter what you think of social media, if you do like something, you get to see more of it.
Yeah.
And I am seeing a lot of these amazing, they are staged, quite a lot of them, but these beautiful silver-haired models with bright coloured clothes on. And I'm like, wow, yeah, you know, I haven't quite got enough wrinkles yet. You know, you just sort of look and think, oh yeah, that's the next stage. So it's not so frightening, you know. So yeah, we just need to see more of it. We need to see more, and it's not just about women, you know, doing what they want or being free, or you know, it is about having that purpose and really contributing to society.
Yeah.
Because once you get to that age, the fact you've survived, you know, into your 50s, you've got so much experience, so much wisdom that really needs to be shared. And so many people are drifting through life just not knowing what's happening next, or if what's happening is right or wrong. And we need this lovely, you know, army of powerful, strong survivors who could say, yep, it's fine, keep on going, you know, there's light at the end, you'll get there. And that's
I love that. I love that. I love that. God, I feel all inspired. I'm like, let's go and create an army of powerful women. Yes.
yeah. You know, and yeah, that's what we want. I saw recently, I kept getting these emails to see if I would join like the Forbes 30 over 30, and I was like, oh dear, they haven't looked up how old I am. And you know, then it was like the 40 over 40 when I didn't respond, and then I missed the invitation for the 50 over 50, and then I've just seen they've published it, and it's like, oh, you know, I want to be on there before I'm one of the 60 over 60, you know. But you know, that's really good. And what was interesting was the 50 over 50, they did actually have quite a few women who were over 60 in the 50 over 50 group. So again, they're lumping women together. It's like, oh, okay, post-menopause, let's just put you all in a gang together. But actually that decade, 50 to 60, is a really powerful and challenging one, because you know, at 50 you can get away with still looking like you're in your 40s, but by the time you're 60 you really do look like you're 60, but you're not really an old 70, 80-year-old. And it's a very challenging time, I think. And you know, I've got a lot of friends, you know, between 40 and 70, and I notice this progression, and I'm like, oh, how am I going to cope with that? You know, how? So yeah, we need to sort of narrow it down, you know, and say, no, the 50s is a generation, but also the 60s, because who knows what exciting things are going to happen in your 60s or your 70s. You know,
absolutely. I love it. I think, you know, it's really, you know, those three, you were talking about spirituality, the three kind of phases of womanhood or femininity: the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And like I say, I completely agree with you, because we get a lot of the maiden. That's what the media and that's what companies sell, is the maiden, the young, you know, nubile and gorgeous and thin and beautiful. And then the motherhood, of course, which is another big trope that is really pushed, that women, you know, to be a mother. But the crone, like I say, it's something of like seen as to be feared and seen to be, you know, not excited about. It's like, oh God, I'm going to get older. But actually, like you say, I mean, we've all come through a pandemic and we've survived the pandemic. We're still here. And, you know, life, if anything, I think that time showed us that our life is very precious, and it's not, you know, it's not everlasting. You know, it can be taken away from us like that with no warning. And so the fact that women are able to survive, like you say, and have all this wisdom and this, still have energy and still be able to follow their calling, I think is massively inspirational. And long may we see more of them, because I think younger generations need to know that it's not something to be feared, it's something to be celebrated.
It is definitely. And I think the reason it's feared is because we are in a patriarchal, we have been in a patriarchal society, where there is a genuine fear of a strong crone, because a woman who is fully embodied and has survived to cronehood and has embraced her croneship, she's fearless, absolutely fearless. And you know, when we do look through the ages of the women who have really stood up for things, it has been the women, it has been these older women. And I think it goes along with business and with your personal life. A lot of women as well have been taught to be scared of cronehood, because you stand up, and quite often you will be standing up alone, protecting your children, protecting your grandchildren, protecting all your family, your community. And you could well be burnt at the stake. You could have stones thrown at you, because we all feel, we know that that has happened. We know it's been a reality. And so to stand up into cronehood, it's a lot easier, and this is very challenging, to be sick, to be ill, to be bedbound. And I don't think it's it's no surprise really that so many women have burnout, have crashes, have really difficult menopause, because the menopause is a baptism of fire. You're having this heat because of all the suppressed rage of this wisdom and this power that we've suppressed, not just in our lifetime, but for generations. And you have to go through that fire and come out the other side and then be it. And I mean, I know that what I believe is probably very controversial, but I feel I've experienced enough and I've gone through enough pain and trauma that I believe there is a sort of a movement towards medicating and suppressing women's transition into cronehood. But menopause is being seen as a disadvantage, as a disease, as being sick, being ill, being weak. And actually society needs to allow women to go through that transition. And if it means a few years in bed, if it means really feeling that, that's what we got to do. And we've, as a society, we have to support that, rather than saying, no, just take this pill and carry on as if you still are a young whatever. I think it is very challenging. And I do get a bit triggered by all this embracing of, hey, wow, you don't now need to suffer. You can now take this and you can glide through it and still feel like a 30-year-old when you're 70. So yeah, I do feel no pain, no gain.
No, absolutely. I mean, two of my absolute role models are actually Sandy Toksvig and Miriam Margolyes, both of which are in the Cronin family, and both complete powerhouses of women, both completely. I mean, Sandy started a whole political party, at a certain age. And, Miriam, I just love her. The fact that these women just don't care. That's the thing. Yeah. It's like they are who they are. They say what they want to say. They're not spiteful or mean, but they don't worry about what people think of them. They just are themselves, and I think it's glorious. So yes, we have to kind of allow women to age. I think it's kind of the bottom line, and support them in aging, and not see them as like, well, your use of society is now done, so we'll just throw you on the rubbish heap. And I think it's definitely something that we all have to take part in, and to encourage society to move in that direction.
Yeah, and support people, because it's not easy to transition and to try and fit into that matriarchal, well, I've got to still work 9 to 5 and I've still got to do this, that, and the other, whilst my body is going through this massive metamorphosis. We need to embrace and support women through all stages, puberty as well. It really is sort of shining a light on the the magic of our bodies, and how we go through these processes to then fully become who we are meant to be.
Yeah, I love that. This is like fire to my soul. I'm just like, yes, I'm with you. Honestly, it's great. So if you had a DeLorean parked outside, which would be pretty cool, and you were able to travel back to that 18-year-old when you were doing your art, knowing what you know now and everything you've experienced, would you say anything to her? And what would you say?
I think the main thing is just to have trust and not be so worried about not fitting in. I mean, I've always felt outside of society. I've always been very spiritual. I had quite a lot of psychic abilities from an early age, which is very difficult learning how to manage it. And then wanting to be an artist, not fitting in with the sort of academic structures that are laid out, and being very sick. I wasn't very healthy at all because of my Ehlers-Danlos, although it was then undiagnosed. So I was a chronic asthmatic. I was really, really sick. So I think but again, it was challenging times and I wouldn't change it. But I suppose just to say, don't worry, maybe meditate more. I think we never meditate enough. So yeah, meditate more. I think that might have been, going deeper inside. That would probably be the thing. And connect with nature, just go outside, stand barefoot on the grass, meditate, then go back into the world and just with a fresh perspective.
I love that. I think, I really believe that when we talk about the patriarchy and, talk about how obviously with the beekeeping world and all of the patriarchal questions and stuff. And I really do feel that education, I mean, it's all about, it's a memory test, really, because it is like, what can you remember to pass an exam? And actually, it's, if you think about the things that could be taught, that actually would be of value to us in our lives. Meditation is a big one. Self-love and self-worth. Love yourself, great, but how? Like, it's kind of one of those things. I think everybody should learn first aid. I think it should be given. I think everyone should learn sign language. I think everybody should learn financial, responsibility and also how to cook. I think these things are like a given, and they should be a given. And I don't know about you, I've never used algebra once since I left school. And yet there was a lot of focus put on A1 and B1. I don't flipping know. I try and help my kids with their math homework now, and I'm like, I have no idea. I've got an English degree. I can write you a poem about it, but you have to be able to do an equation.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's everybody has different skills. I mean, I always loved maths and loved English, but and loved art. But because I was good at art, I was always told that I was bound to be bad at maths. And I actually did quite well in maths. And that everyone was surprised, everyone was shocked. And it's really hard to continue to be good at something when everyone around you is telling you that you shouldn't be good at that. So whereas English, I can speak, I can write, but I couldn't pass the English exams because maybe I am on some levels dyslexic or dyspraxic or whatever, but my spelling is atrocious and I really do struggle. And even when I'm typing things and you have a spell check, it doesn't even know what it is I'm trying to say. And that's what I find really hard, because then I'm having to use I'm having to change the whole structure of the sentence because I can't even get the right spelling for the word I'm trying.
Even worse, like I have no idea.
I mean, it just says, I don't know, things like diarrhea, which you shouldn't have to write too. But I try and write that and it doesn't know what I'm trying to say.
You're not alone in that. It's a hard word. It always makes me laugh that the word for somebody who struggles with language and spelling is dyslexia. Like, could you not have picked an easier word for them to spell? Jesus.
I know. And like the physics, psychic, and all those ones, the PHYs and PHIs, they just get me every time. So
Bless you. So I mean, talking about writing, because obviously you do have a lot of wisdom, and I do think that you have a lot of feels like a lot of wealth. It's one word I want to use, which is kind of a weird word to use, I suppose. A lot of wealth that you could give, not wealth maybe financially, but wealth in terms of your experience and all the knowledge that you have. And it would seem a shame not to think about writing that down at some point, maybe with support and help. But is a book something that you've ever thought of doing? And what would it be about? You talk, obviously in terms of the bee world, but would you focus on a particular thing?
Well, as in my bee world, I've actually got 2 books published already. So A to Bees, which is Artist to Bees, which was my journey. And then A Quest for Bees in Bhutan, which was to celebrate my 50th. I went to Bhutan on my own and I was working with beekeepers and traveling around and meeting beekeepers. So that was going to be a chapter for the book I've yet to write, which is Spiritual Beekeeping. But it was so exciting that I ended up thinking, I've just got to write it now as a book. And then there's 2 books which I've almost completed. I tend to do 2 things at once. I think it's like that batching, you just sort of write it. And the book that I think will come out first, hopefully before Christmas, is Creating a Buzz About Health, which is about all the different aspects of health that I've learned personally and the connection with bees. So I wanted it to be like a handbook. My other 2 books are, I'm just thinking if I've got them handy, but A to Bees is 50 little chapters. And it's very easy to pick up and just read a chapter. And it talks a bit about my illness, but I don't go into depth about it. But it really talks about how I how bees came into my life, and the project that I did at the Newt in Somerset, so setting up the bees there. But although I don't name the Newt in Somerset because I wrote the book before the Newt was open. It opened in 2019. So yeah, creating a buzz about health. I now feel, because I've got my podcast, there's more people now saying, well, what about this and what about that? And you forget what you know. So obvious things to me are still new to other people.
Yeah.
So again, it's like a dip in book. So if someone says, well, what exactly is colonics? Because people don't talk about things like that. Then I say, well, this is what colonics are. This is what happened when, even though I swore blind I would never have colonics, I did, and this is what happened. So it gives people a bit of an idea, because there are so many treatments and so many options out there, and you don't know who to ask. So it's a handbook like that. And then the other book, which again is sort of halfway through, is This is Honey. And this is, I like the idea of having 50 chapters that are just bite-sized pieces. So this is 50 of my favorite honeys. And I'm writing about the beekeeper, the floral source, the connection between the plants and the bees, so the medicinal benefits of those plants and the bees. So yes, so there's 2 books that I'm really close to finishing, but I need to sort of block out some time and just get on with the final touches.
See, I knew you had those wealth about you and all this wisdom. I told you, I could feel it. I was like, if she's not writing, she needs to share this somewhere, because good Lord, there's so much in you. And I feel like it's just wonderful. I'm so happy that you're doing this, because I think that it's really going to benefit the people who need the wisdom that you have to share. So it sounds awesome. Bless you. So, and obviously I will put all the links down here for Paula, but just so that you obviously let people know. So obviously, where can people find you? Website, social media, etc.
Okay, so I have my podcast, which is Creating a Buzz About Health, and my name, Paula Carnell. I'm on Instagram as Paula Carnell, and I've got a flower crown. So most of my social media, if it's me, then it's a picture of me all dolled up with beautiful fresh flowers on my head. So just in case there's other people trying to be me. And I have YouTube as well with various, I try and put up where I've spoken. If they've been recorded, then that goes up there. And then I've got lots of little training videos. And then my website, where you can find my courses and links to everything. And I have an online shop. So I've got downloadables and all kinds of bits and bobs about beekeeping and about creating a buzz about health.
Oh, fabulous. It sounds wonderful. And everyone's going to dash off now. Well, finish watching this, and then you can dash off.
Yeah, then.
But yeah, it's just fascinating. Like I say, it was a world that I don't have a lot of knowledge about. But actually, you explain things in such a very engaging and inviting way. And it's been fascinating, as I knew it would be, Paula. So genuinely, thank you. It's just such a great chat, honestly. And I feel like there's been a lot of takeaways from this. So thank you, honestly.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And I'm really chuffed that you invited me. So thank you.
You're very welcome. So guys, thank you for watching this podcast, this episode. Like I say, I hope that you found it interesting, and go and check out Paula if you want to. All the links will be down here. And as ever, thank you for watching. Please give this channel a like and a follow and all that good stuff. And we will definitely see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.